72 minutes to end civilization is insane, and somehow one person can still start the whole chain.
That is the terrifying part. One decision, no committee, no do-over, just a menu of destruction.
So the question is, did we build deterrence or did we build a faster way to gamble with the planet?
And once you hear how the system actually works, it stops sounding like security and starts sounding like panic with paperwork.
All right, let's open the hood and see why this exists at all. 72 minutes to end civilization is insane.
Humanity really did build a timer and call it security.
And the wildest part is one person can start it?
One president, one decision, and no permission slip from anybody.
That is the least democratic apocalypse I have ever heard of.
Reddit would still argue it is not true.
Reddit versus the Congress report is a funny battle to lose.
And the scary thing is, the time window is measured in minutes.
That is not leadership, that is panic with paperwork.
Paperwork is generous. It is basically a menu of destruction.
A menu is such a sick way to describe it.
Denny's, but make it thermonuclear.
No, that is terrible.
It is terrible because the options are pre-built before the crisis starts.
So the president is not improvising, just choosing from horrors?
Exactly, because there is no time for a committee once a missile is coming.
And that is supposed to make us feel safer somehow?
That is the deterrence argument, which sounds elegant until you hear it aloud.
More weapons make us safer is one of those sentences that should get booed.
It made sense when only 2 countries had them, not 9.
9 nuclear states is already too many to trust with a group chat.
Group chat is generous. Some of these people are basically live-wired arguments.
And the book keeps pointing to the same thing. Everyone is already at war with somebody.
That is what makes it worse, because the bad mood is already loaded into the system.
Russia, Ukraine, India, Pakistan, Israel, Iran, North Korea, all of it.
And the US and Russia are still sitting on the biggest piles.
The whole thing feels like a chain of accidents waiting for a headline.
Or waiting for the wrong person on the wrong day.
The presidential football is the part that gets me.
The emergency satchel, the authentication, the black book, all of it.
There is something deeply cursed about a black book of strike options.
Cursed and efficiently organized, which is worse.
And people think the football is some movie prop, but it is real.
Real enough that a military aide follows the president everywhere.
So the whole system is built around speed, not sanity.
Speed first because the missiles travel in about 30 minutes.
30 minutes to decide the fate of the planet is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, and that is the architecture we inherited.
And that is why the president does not need Congress?
Exactly, because Congress cannot deliberate faster than an ICBM.
Which is a sentence nobody should ever have to say out loud.
Yet here we are worshiping the stopwatch.
What blew my mind is the weapons themselves changed too.
Atomic bombs became thermonuclear bombs, smaller and way more powerful.
So they got deadlier and easier to deliver.
That was the whole point, because you cannot stuff an elephant into a missile.
Okay, that image is insane, but fair.
The old Hiroshima bomb was huge, and then the engineering race kept shrinking it.
So the arms race was also a size race.
And a survivability race, because submarines changed everything.
The submarine part feels straight out of a nightmare.
Nuclear subs are nearly impossible to find, which is the whole point.
Easier to find a grapefruit in space, apparently.
That line is absurdly vivid, and somehow it helps.
Helps and terrifies at the same time, which is fun.
Because a launch from underwater is the nightmare scenario of uncertainty.
You do not know who did it, so you start guessing.
And guessing is exactly how escalation starts.
That feels like a flaw you would never want in anything.
Especially not in a system built to end the world.
I also keep thinking about the people running it being trained to obey.
That is what makes the command chain so rigid.
And nobody is just like, wait, maybe do not follow that order?
The entire culture is built against that impulse.
Which is horrifying when you say it plainly.
Because the fantasy is always that one brave person saves everyone.
Hollywood has absolutely damaged our expectations there.
Totally. Real life is closer to obedience drills than hero speeches.
And then there are false alarms, which might be even scarier.
The system has misread things before, including simulations and mistaken signals.
So at one point people thought missiles were already coming?
Bill Perry got that call and had to prepare to inform the president.
Then it turned out to be a VHS tape.
A VHS tape accidentally inserted into the wrong machine.
Civilization almost lost to bad office equipment is brutal.
That is the point, though. Tiny errors can look like extinction.
And the satellite system only tells you so much so fast.
It detects launch signatures almost instantly, then trajectory, then likely target.
So they know the direction, but not always the full story.
Exactly, and if it comes from a submarine, attribution gets messy.
That is the part that sounds like a disaster algorithm.
A very expensive disaster algorithm.
Which is why the whole nuclear war game thing matters so much.
Proud Prophet showed the room how ugly the outcome really was.
Everyone left depressed, which sounds about right.
That was the rare moment the secret became public in a useful way.
And even the people who built the system seem scared of it now.
Bill Perry is the clearest example of that shift.
That is what age does, I guess. It removes the company language.
And leaves the memory of what the machine can actually do.
Eisenhower feels relevant here too, right?
Absolutely, because he warned about the military-industrial complex.
But he also talked about an alert citizenry balancing defense.
That part gets skipped way too often.
Because it is easier to fund fear than attention.
That is annoyingly well put.
So the real question is not just weapons, it is public memory.
Exactly, because forgetfulness is how deterrence becomes a joke.
And yet leaders still throw around nuclear threats casually.
Which is why the book feels less like theory and more like an alarm.
A very loud alarm that nobody wants to hear.
But hearing it is better than pretending the switch is not there.
Okay, but if the system is this brittle, what is the actual off-ramp?
Maybe starting with admitting no one should have that much unchecked power.
Which feels obvious until you look at how the world is built.
And that is exactly why this conversation matters.
Man, I hate that you are right.
I know, it is a very annoying kind of right.
All right, we have to keep going with this next time.
Yeah, because the next layer gets even darker.
We will pick it up there because this rabbit hole is not done with us.
Definitely not, and episode 2 gets into what happens after launch.
The wildest part is still that one person can start it.
That is the sentence that should ruin everybody's week.
And somehow we just live like that is normal.
No, because people hear it and then go back to brunch.
Exactly, like, okay, anyway, Eggs Benedict.
The scary thing is the system is built for speed, not wisdom.
Right, because the whole logic is you only have minutes.
6 minutes, if that, which is almost comic if it were not real.
6 minutes to end civilization is insane.
And the president does not need Congress, a vote, or a committee.
That part hits like a punch every single time.
People keep assuming there is a grown-up in the room with a red button.
There is a grown-up, but he is also on a timer.
That is not comforting at all.
And the football detail is honestly surreal.
The satchel, the aid, the authentication, all of it feels like a movie prop.
Except the prop contains strike options for millions of people.
That black book thing is horrifying in its banality.
It sounds like a menu at a terrible airport diner.
Denny's, but for apocalypse.
Bro, that is exactly the problem.
What got me is how fast the technology made this more dangerous.
Yeah, the bombs got smaller, but the consequences got bigger.
And the logic of the triad means submarines are always out there.
That line about finding a grapefruit in space was outrageous.
It is ridiculous, but also deeply not ridiculous.
Because if you cannot see the thing, you cannot fully control it.
Which is why mutual assured destruction feels less like strategy and more like a gamble.
A gamble with the whole species on the table.
And now there are 9 nuclear-armed countries, not 2.
That is the part people still do not metabolize.
Because during the Cold War, at least the map was simpler.
Now you have India and Pakistan, Israel and Iran tensions, Russia and Ukraine, all of it.
The world feels like a stack of lit matches.
And every one of those matches sits next to somebody with launch authority.
That is why the misunderstanding point is not dramatic language. It is literal.
Wait, and the detection system is basically reading heat signatures, right?
Yeah, satellites see the rocket exhaust and start narrowing the origin fast.
So the planet could be halfway into panic before the smoke clears.
And if it is a submarine launch, the source can stay murky.
That ambiguity is where the nightmare lives.
Because then decision-makers start guessing who did it.
And guessing with nuclear weapons is basically madness with paperwork.
That is such a brutal way to put it, but yes.
The weirdest relief in the conversation is that the system is so rigid.
You mean because the people inside it are trained to follow orders?
Exactly, which is also the terrifying part.
Congratulations, the safety feature is obedience.
That should not have made me laugh, but it did.
And then you get these stories where people assume somebody will refuse.
Hollywood has completely poisoned us on that idea.
Real life is closer to, I was trained to execute the process.
Which is why the Nixon anecdote is so eerie.
A drunk president allegedly threatening apocalypse is not a joke.
No, just a stunningly bad Tuesday.
And the fact that people around him reportedly had to improvise safeguards.
That tells you the formal system is not enough.
Which is exactly what makes the whole thing feel unstable.
The part with Bill Perry hit me hardest, honestly.
The false alarm from the VHS tape? That is nightmare fuel.
A tape mistake almost turned into a national death sentence.
And the scariest part is that it looked real because it was meant to.
That is the essence of all these systems, honestly.
They are so optimized for believable catastrophe.
Which means humans get one tiny input wrong and everybody pays.
And then there is the other layer, which is the public never really sees this.
Right, because the whole thing is hidden behind classified language.
Yet the consequences are not hidden at all.
That contrast is what makes the book so brutal.
It forces you to sit with the fact that civilization is thinner than we think.
And then FEMA saying there is no real population protection planning.
That sentence is devastating on its own.
Because if everyone is dead, the plan becomes continuity of government.
Which is such a cold, bureaucratic phrase for total collapse.
Government must continue, apparently, even if nobody else does.
That is dark enough to be funny for 1 second.
The deeper theme is that deterrence has become a faith system.
Like we believe in it because the alternative is unbearable?
Exactly, and that is why nobody wants to question it too hard.
Because if you question it, you have to admit the whole machine is insane.
And then you are the weird one in the room.
But the only sane response may be to keep asking ugly questions.
Like whether our leaders are remotely fit for that kind of power.
Exactly. And that idea gets uncomfortable very fast.
Because nobody wants to imagine a tiny lapse becoming a species event.
Which is why this feels less like policy and more like psychology.
And psychology is a mess on a good day.
On a bad day, it is literally civilization's worst advisor.
The president is also just a human being under stress.
And that is the problem, because the job assumes superhuman clarity.
Meanwhile, the clock is screaming in the background.
And all of that is before you even ask who survives the aftermath.
Which is where the horror really turns into something almost medieval.
Exactly. Underground survival, radiation, hunger, and the dead envied.
That sentence stays with you longer than it should.
Do you think people actually believe this is impossible now?
I think they believe it is too big to picture, which is worse.
And that is why the book matters, even if it is unbearable.
Great. So the correct response is to be informed and miserable.
Pretty much, but at least it is honest.
Honest beats comforting when the stakes are this insane.
Especially when the comforting version is basically a fairy tale.
All right, we have to leave it there before my brain fries.
Fair, because episode 2 gets into what happens after launch.
And that is when the nightmare stops being theoretical.
Yeah, and it gets even more absurd in the worst way.
Cool, love that for us.
We will pick it up there, because this rabbit hole is not done with us.
Great, because nothing says civilization like a Denny's menu for apocalypse.
That image is insane, but it is also exactly the problem.
Right, because the whole thing is packaged like a clean chain of command.
And underneath it is basically one human being with a panic deadline.
6 minutes to choose a response is not decision-making. That is a hostage situation.
And people act like that kind of power is normal because it has existed for decades.
That is the part that gets me, the normalization of insanity.
Annie keeps saying the public forgets because the system hides inside routine.
Routine is a dangerous word when the routine can erase a continent.
Imagine calling that peace through deterrence and sounding proud.
Yeah, peace through everybody holding a knife to everybody else's throat.
The wild part is that the president does not need permission from anyone.
Not Congress, not the defense secretary, not even the whole apparatus.
It sounds fake until you realize Congress literally had to write that down.
The fact that people on Reddit will argue with physics and bureaucracy is so funny.
And yet the documents are like, no, actually, this is real.
That alone changes how you think about elections.
It makes every leader evaluation feel less like politics and more like survival.
Which is terrifying because we do not screen for that energy properly.
We screen for charisma, confidence, and who can survive a cable news mudfight.
Basically, can they survive a debate and a bad haircut?
Not exactly the same as can they resist starting civilization-ending fires.
And then there is the football, which sounds like a joke until you see the system around it.
The military aid is basically glued to the president every second.
24/7 with the satchel, the authentication, and the black book of strikes.
That black book part is especially grim because it is already shrink-wrapped into options.
Shrink-wrapped apocalypse, limited edition.
No, but seriously, the menu idea is horrifying because it makes mass death feel administrative.
Administrative horror is the worst kind because it feels efficient.
And efficiency is exactly what the system worships in a crisis.
That's why the speed matters so much. The missiles move too fast for humanity.
A missile takes roughly 30 minutes across continents, so the response is compressed into minutes.
30 minutes is basically no time to process reality.
It is enough time to be wrong very confidently.
That should be on a government plaque somewhere, sadly.
The reason the whole command structure exists is because the timeline is so brutal.
Which sounds logical until you realize the logic is built on panic.
And the weapons themselves are totally different from the Hiroshima bomb people picture.
That was atomic. This is thermonuclear, which is an order of magnitude scarier.
It is a bomb inside a bomb, scaled up and shrunk down at the same time.
Humanity really did say, let's make the murder machine smaller and stronger.
And then put it in silos and submarines like that somehow makes it elegant.
The triad is what makes this feel so permanent because it is land, sea, and air.
400 silos in the United States alone is such a chilling detail.
And then there are the submarines just lurking in the oceans all the time.
Handmaidens of the Apocalypse is an absurdly poetic name for a nightmare.
Easier to find a grapefruit in space than a nuclear sub underwater is wild.
That quote tells you everything about why accidental escalation is so hard to model.
Because you may never know where the first real hit came from.
Exactly. And that is where the submarine launch scenario becomes terrifying.
So the system may know a missile launched, but not who launched it.
Which means attribution becomes a guess under maximum pressure.
And guesses with nuclear weapons are not guesses, they are global decisions.
This is where the old idea of mutual assured destruction starts sounding like mutual madness.
Mutual assured destruction is such a chill acronym for cosmic insanity.
Right. MAD is the most honest thing anyone ever named in policy.
What scared me most is that the people running this often do not want the full picture.
Former officials kept saying many presidents are not deeply prepared for the reality.
That is the sentence that should make everybody sit down.
Some of them are trained to trust the chain, not question the chain.
Which is great if the chain is sane and horrifying if it is not.
And the human problem is that we overestimate the chance of some heroic last-second revolt.
Yeah, like some movie moment where a general throws the phone.
Hollywood has really damaged our sense of how obedience works.
The training is to follow orders, not to freestyle morality in the moment.
Which is why the system is only as safe as the assumptions built into it.
And then there are the false alarms, which are somehow even more absurd.
A tape once simulated a Soviet attack and the warning looked real.
A VHS tape almost becoming Armageddon is almost too stupid to be real.
The universe keeps giving us evidence that the system is fragile.
And people still talk about nuclear control like it is airtight.
There is also that deeper point about no population protection planning.
FEMA basically saying everyone is dead is horrifyingly blunt.
The planning shifts from saving lives to continuity of government.
Which is a very fancy way of saying paperwork after the world ends.
That is bleak, but not wrong.
It also means the public fantasy of being protected is mostly theater.
Theater with bunkers and badges and very expensive confidence.
But the scariest part might be how many nuclear states are already in conflict.
9 nuclear-armed countries means more chances for some regional war to go sideways.
US and Russia, India and Pakistan, Israel and Iran. It is all live wire energy.
And proxy wars make the actual red lines harder to see.
Ukraine, Gaza, the Russia-West standoff, all of it piles onto the same fuse.
Which is why Annie keeps circling back to deterrence failing.
Deterrence only works if every actor stays perfectly rational forever.
Good luck basing civilization on perfect rationality.
Especially when leaders are using nuclear rhetoric as political theater.
The problem is, the theater can become a misread threat in seconds.
So we end up with systems that are fast, secret, and brittle.
And those three things are exactly what you do not want together.
Honestly, the whole thing feels like a civilization built on a dare.
Yeah, and the dare keeps getting inherited by people who did not invent it.
That is why the leadership question is not abstract at all.
It is probably the most consequential staffing decision on Earth.
Imagine if every candidate had to pass a nuclear temperament test.
We would have very different campaign ads.
Less slogan, more psychiatric clearance.
And maybe that is the uncomfortable takeaway here.
Yeah, knowledge is not comfort, but ignorance is way more expensive.
That is the maddening bargain of this entire subject.
All right, we have to stop before my nervous system files a complaint.
Fair, because episode 2 is where the aftermath gets even worse.
And that is when the clock stops being metaphorical.
We will pick it up there, because the next part is the part nobody wants to imagine.
Perfect. See you in the nightmare continuation.
Teaser for episode 2, what actually happens in the first minutes after launch.